Hello, and welcome to Real Person Reviews. I'm Sam, and I'm a real person, and today I want to talk to you about Mario and Luigi Paper Jam for Nintendo 3DS. But before we get into that, I wanted to say a few things up front. As always, if you want to see a written review of this before, after, or instead of the video, then you can go to www.thegravelpit.net, or you can click on the link in the description. That'll take you to my written review. I also want to say that, just kind of give a little background of my involvement, or I guess my familiarity, that's maybe a better word, my experience with these series, as this is a crossover game between the Mario and Luigi series, as well as the Paper Mario series, which are both Mario-themed RPGs. And I've played Paper Mario, which I've also reviewed, and I've played most of Super Paper Mario back when I still had a Wii. I started a little bit of Thousand Year Door, but again, my Wii broke around the time when I started that, so I didn't really get anywhere in that. So I know that stuff about the Paper Mario series, and as far as the Mario and Luigi series, I've not played any of those games before, because I never really knew what exactly they were, and I never really sought out what they were before, so this was kind of my jump into that series as well. So my opinions might not be, and viewpoint stuff might not necessarily be the best, because I'm coming more as a fan of Paper Mario than I am a fan of Mario and Luigi, so just keep that stuff in mind. I guess that's one, so that might explain some of my idiocy. Some of it is just genuine idiocy. So like I mentioned, this is a crossover game between these two different RPG series. And I believe there was another Paper Mario game on the 3DS that wasn't really an RPG. It was more of like an action, puzzly strategy type thing. Sticker Star, but I haven't played that, so whatever. I can't talk about that either. But it is an RPG. And I guess I want to kind of probably start with a little bit of this plot. It's pretty simple, is that basically the Luigi from the Mario and Luigi universe is messing around, and he accidentally stumbles across this magical book, and upon, stumbling upon it, and it drops it or whatever, and it opens up, and it starts shooting out all of these entities from the Paper Mario universe. They all come out of this book, and basically it gets scattered all over the fucking place, all over the land. And in doing that, there's a lot of copies of a lot of characters, especially a lot of the minions like Koopas and Goombas and all that, and Toads. But most notably, that Paper Bowser gets sent out of there, and he teams up with regular Bowser, and they go and they kidnap. Basically, they have the plan to try to take over this world, this land. Because they team up and they figure two of them will be able to do it way easier, and they go and they steal both the regular and Paper Peach. They steal the peaches, while the Bowser Juniors go and steal the book. They end up finding it, and they keep it, and they're trying to keep it out of the way of anyone else, because they know that if it gets into the wrong hands, someone might try to put all the paper people back into there, and then those two won't get to hang out anymore. So There's those little plots going on. So you're trying to save the princesses, you're trying to recover the book, and you're trying to return everyone to their proper worlds and save the day. As well as trying to save all these paper toads that got scattered around everywhere. So, I guess everything is sort of Luigi's fault, but it's a fucking accident. Whatever. So that's really the main plot. And pretty early on, Mario and Luigi team up with Paper Mario. For some reason, I guess Paper Luigi wasn't good enough to put in the fucking game. I guess, whatever. And that's where it starts. Now, that's really not that complicated of a plot. It's pretty simple, but I feel like a lot of the complexity of the game comes in with the gameplay. And now, as far as the main gameplay, I guess, is still the RPG kind of stuff. And some of it's kind of standard, you go into fighting battles, and they're battles. You fight battles by running into enemies on the world map. So it's not like random encounters. You still have to run into the enemies. And you do that, and you get into these fights, and they're still technically, you know, turn-based combat. You fight the enemies, you beat the enemies, you level up and stuff. The combat itself is pretty deep. It's simple, but it's pretty deep in all the different stuff you can do, because your main attacks, like in each of your characters is controlled by a button. Mario is controlled by A, so you do all his actions with A. Luigi's controlled by B, and Paper Mario is controlled by Y. And, you know, each of them have the ability to, they can pick to do their basic attacks. Each of them have two basic attacks. They can either, do the iconic jump on an enemy's head, or they can pull out a hammer and attack the enemy with that. And they also have the ability to use these special abilities they have, which use up Bros points, which basically are this game's version of, MP. Mario and Luigi have their own, each have their own set of Bros attacks, is what they're called, which require the other bro to be alive and well, if they're both up, you can pick that attack, and then you have to put in a specific kind of like commands, hitting buttons, maybe moving the control stick around, and they'll execute this kind of complicated attack. And you have to time it precisely, and you have to aim it well to hit either a singular enemy or multiple enemies. Depends on the attack that you choose. Some attacks are going to be stronger against certain enemies, like fire is better against paper enemies. Also, just timing your regular attacks well will also be a good thing, because you'll do more damage with those. And Paper Mario has a similar thing, except they're called trio attacks, which means that you need to have all three of the bros alive and kicking in order to be able to do those. And those are usually more complicated, but they end up doing more damage. With all of these moves, you're able to... You're basically trying to time the button presses and do these different things. Like some of them require repeated button presses or the right sequence of button presses. Some of them require like proper timing. Some of them require you to move the stick around and aim things. So there's a lot that goes into just doing all your different attacks. So it's not just select your attack and then it happens. You're very involved in picking your attack and also using it. I mean, that's pretty much the main draw of doing all those different kinds of attacks. They also cost different amounts of badge points depending on how much damage they can do. Or not badge points, Bros points. Sorry. And Paper Mario also has this special ability where he can make paper copies of himself, and then when he attacks, all of his paper copies will attack with him. And they can also, they can make him deal a bit more damage, but then when he gets attacked, they can also take damage for him, and those copies can be destroyed. So that's a thing to kind of balance. And of course, you can use items in the battle as well if you want to use your turn doing that. And it's still turn-based because you're not really attacking at the same time as the enemy is. Usually it's like an enemy is doing an attack, or one of your characters is doing an attack. And, it's kind of based on the speed stats of everyone. So, it's still turn-based, you can still think about your stuff, but... it's still very action-packed. And then on the other side of that, when you're defending, you have basically three options. One option is to hold down the block button, which is a guarantee that you're gonna at least lessen the blow that you're gonna take from the enemy. It's a way to consistently take less damage than you normally would. However, that means that you are gonna take a hit. So you can also try to dodge, which again, hitting the correct button for dodging will be things like either jumping or something maybe, or using hammer to knock things away. It's kind of context sensitive, and you have to watch who's being attacked during this attack by what and when. But you can use those to try and dodge everything and avoid damage, which is another option. It's a little riskier, but again, you can take you risk maybe you're not gonna take any damage if you do it correctly. And, the risk versus reward thing happening there. And then the further is that you can counterattack, which means usually it's doing the same thing as the whole dodge thing, except that you time it in such a way that you actually hit the enemy as well, which is, even riskier, but an even better reward, because you can avoid damage and hurt the enemy at the same time. So there's that whole thing going on with it. And on top of that, there's also a thing that gets introduced partway into the game as well with the battle cards, which happen on the bottom screen. To use these battle cards, you have to use star points, and you get star points by executing these excellent moves. Basically, when you execute moves, depending on how well you do them, It's either okay, good, great, or excellent. And doing an excellent move is you need to time it right and get everything down. You do more damage when you do those, and you also get star points, so it's a lot of incentive to try and do those. You then spend those star points to use those cards, which you can use as many cards as you want on a given turn if you have enough star points to afford them, but only 3 of them will be ever out and face up at any given time. You can also try and build your deck and get new cards throughout the game by buying them or doing certain challenges and finding them off of, defeated enemies. So that's another facet of the battle system. So you can see that the combat system is pretty complicated, even though none of it's real. It's not real complicated to really do, but I guess it's very deep in all the different things you have to consider. And then, of course, there's leveling up after that, which, a more basic RPG thing is that beating enemies gets you experience, getting enough will level you up, leveling up makes your stats go up. Once you hit certain level benchmarks, you'll then rank up, and when you rank up, not only do your stats go up, but you also get to pick a perk that can, help you, like boosting certain damage or defense, or giving you some kind of special effect, or boosting the progression of certain stats over others. And for a lot of these, there are some that are universal that can be picked, multiple times or at least once per character, but everyone can use them. And there are some that only the bros can pick. There are some that only Paper Mario can pick, and there are some that only one character can pick. And then it's gone from the pool, so that the next characters won't even have that as an option. So it really makes you have to customize, and specialize each character a certain way. Rather than just trying to build everyone the exact same way and trying to go through the game like that. So that's another thing to kind of keep you interested and invested in doing that. And you can further alter stats and some other special effects with the different gear, putting on different shoes, hammers, and one other piece of wear, or you can get extra equipment slots and put different kinds of equipment on them to try and give them some different bonuses and perks and stat changes. So there's a whole lot of more standard RPG stuff happening with that as well. So the whole RPG part, pretty interesting, and I think they did that stuff really well. And then there's also a lot of other stuff in there as well, where it's like, gosh, there's so much stuff in this. But there are these little mini-games you do, where basically they're kind of like side quests, and you go to these Lakitu information centers to do them. And basically you're trying to save these paper toads. You're trying to find and save a lot of them, and you can do these challenges. There's also hard versions of them. You get these little medals for doing it, and through doing those challenges, after certain benchmarks of completing those little minigame challenges, you're going to unlock battle cards. And doing the hard modes of them won't get you any extra paper toes, but it'll just count towards those medals, which will also count towards getting you more of those battle cards to to build your deck a bit, so it does kind of help your combat stuff a little bit. But most of these minigame challenges are things that aren't really related. They're more like, they're little puzzles you have to solve, or they're, doing, running around trying to catch all these toads and stuff and find them in a certain amount of time. And there's a lot of, different little things based on, reflexes and different little mechanics in the game. They try to put you in these different scenarios, and then of course a hard variant of all of those, pretty much all of them. There's even a few quizzes in there too, which I actually like those quite a bit. But as far as the story goes, when you're actually saving the paper toads, generally you need to save enough of them so that they can work together alongside Toadette to build you a paper craft. And when you get a paper craft, you need this for these paper craft battles, which I know a lot of people kind of complained about. But anyways, papercraft battles. Basically what the papercraft are these giant cardboard robots, essentially. That they have this little group of toads underneath them to move them around, but you're usually in control of their abilities. Of course the enemies have them too, so that's why you need them, so you can fight the enemies. So it's kind of like another side game type of thing, where you have to go in these arenas and fight off these little minion type paper crafts before you fight the big boss paper crafts. And most of these, there's little variants depending on, they do different things, like the enemies and your own paper craft, as you get the different ones, do slightly different things. But it's all kind of based around the same concept of you kind of going around and you hit B to dash at them at the right time to try and knock them over, so that their minions carrying the papercraft, drop the papercraft, and then you can have your minions, which are like toads, throw your papercraft over and land on them, kind of like you would jump on an enemy. Good classic concept. And it does damage to them. And if doing that takes up your energy. So if your toads get tired, you have to go over to these pads and do this quick little rhythm mini game thing where you tap the button. And it's real time because enemies can still come towards you and attack you while you're on that. So you have to be kind of careful on some of those. And you do that enough times to start regaining your energy. And there's also some item blocks out there so that have mushrooms in them. So then if you get hurt, of course, you can replenish your health. And after these battles, at least for completing them, as a part of the main story, you kind of have to do them anyways, just like some of those mini-game quests. But you do get some nice gear after beating those, usually. So that's always a nice little treat after you complete one of them. So there's a lot of variety of different things you can do in the game. There's also some general exploration you do in the overworld that I think it's sort of akin to Zelda in a way, where it's you go around and you do get these different abilities. You get a hammer and you get the ability to run. You get this hammer so you can hit things, and you can get this extendo hand thing that lets you kind of hook shot around things and grab stuff that's far away. And later on in the game, you start being able to use these and backtrack to previous areas. And you're cool, I can get to the spot I couldn't get to before and get this other, this cool, secret, cool stuff that if I didn't come back and go here, I wouldn't be able to get it. And that's a neat little thing to have a lot of those collectibles. And there's also a lot of extra stuff you can do with, there are these expert challenges or a thing where you can go into your menu and look at what your expert challenges are. And a lot of those requires doing very specific things when you're fighting, when you're fighting, you can, certain enemies and maybe dodging enemies or, doing certain amounts of damage and just pulling off, excellent, ratings on a lot of your different moves, doing all kinds of this different stuff. There's a bunch of them in there, so it gives you something to do kind of alongside while you're grinding as well. It just gives you stuff to try and do to keep you very active and interested in what you're doing rather than just mindless grinding or ever. That's really not a thing you do much in the game because of all these different options you have. Along with that, some of those expert challenges go along with this little arcade thing. I'm not sure exactly what it was called, but it's in the bottom of the Likido Information Centers. You go down in those. And there are these 3 different machines you can go to. One of them is where you can replay boss battles with powered-up version of those bosses. You can get rankings from, I don't know, something to S is the best ranking. That's all I know. I don't know what the worst one is. I would assume something like, I don't know, D and F, something like that. So you do those, and that's one of them, and usually there are expert challenges for that. There are ones for this other machine where you can practice, your trio attacks, harder versions of those trio attacks and longer versions, and try to get really good ratings on those. And then the other one is where you can replay papercraft battles, and I don't know if they were harder or not. I didn't really look into that. I didn't retry many of those, or actually I don't think I ever tried any of those. So those are options, and usually completing those, especially trying to play those and beat them, you usually get some of those expert challenges, and some of them are to get S ranks. So there's a lot of stuff to do for that, and completing these expert challenges gets you the special currency, because you get these special points or whatever that you can use in the gear shop to get some really nice gear if you have enough points. So that's pretty cool. But between all of this different stuff, there's a ton to do. And I think that a lot of variety and all that stuff. It's pretty crazy how much stuff is in here. Because I think I played 50 to 60 hours was my playthrough. So yeah, all that kind of goes together and makes the game what it is. And I've kind of already said it as I was trying to explain the stuff. The stuff that I like is I love the RPG stuff. I love the combat is so involved. And there were a lot of times when I was really challenged by it because there were certain attacks I was like, well, I could do these attacks that are going to do more damage if I pull them off, but I'm really bad at pulling these attacks off. So a lot of times I went for these other attacks instead, where I would, they don't do as much damage, but I could consistently do decent damage, rather than risking doing little to no damage on those other ones that I'm not that good at doing. And that was cool. And, playing with their stats and their abilities and the rank up things to give them different little perks and build them a bit differently was really cool. I had a lot of fun with that. And the risk versus reward in, the defense department as well, where you're do you want to block and, consistently take less damage, or try to dodge, where you might just take a bunch of damage anyway and mess up your dodge, or try to counterattack, which is even harder to do with the timing, but you might, you might actually hurt them and not hurt yourself. There's some really cool stuff there. And the battle cards, so you got to strategize what cards you want in your deck, and when to use them and how, and it's a lot of stuff to think about and kind of juggle, but it's all pretty simple. None of it's like, how do I even do this? Like, you can do different strategies and different plans for all this stuff, and it's just, like, all that was really, really fun. I like some of the exploration. I think, overall, like, the world looks really pretty, and some of the music's alright. Some of the music was catchy, so, like, it has, like, that aesthetic. I don't know, like, a lot of it was pretty good, and having variety is nice, too. I like some of the mini-games, especially those quizzes were pretty fun. But as cool as it was, there was a lot of stuff that did kind of bother me about the game. And a lot of that is outside of the battle things. Like I say, some of those mini-games are more based on trying to do things like the running mechanics, or some of the other things that you learn how to do in the game, and some of them are... I mean, none of them are really based on your combat. Like, I think almost none of them are based on your combat skills. Very few of them have anything to do with combat, which is to kind of get you away from combat a bit. I understand that, but also they're really like, some of them are just trying to rely on these mechanics that are kind of sloppy and awkward to use, and that's really annoying. Also, some enemies are kind of difficult to hit because they're two-dimensional. They're paper. So sometimes that can be a little difficult to judge their depth at times. Maybe that's just me. But that, and like the papercraft battles, I didn't hate them, but again, they have nothing to do with the RPG, the combat stuff, and the point is to try and take you away from that, so it's not just a bunch of combat, I guess. But the combat was so wonderful, I don't know why they wanted to distract you from it. I don't know, I guess, like, again, it's like a lot of the stuff was just kind of like, it feels like it's not the same game. They're just like weird, random minigame stuff. They're like, let's just do these for fun, I guess. As if all the attacks weren't fun enough little minigames to do that were directly related to your combat. Also, some of the exploration was kind of shitty in that some of it was fun when I have this like new ability that I have now, and I backtrack to this area. I can go to this other place I couldn't go to before. That's really cool. But then there are certain parts where, like, basically they've been shooting off this stuff from a cannon that keeps shooting down these different pieces of, like, paper landscapes that change the areas that you've been to before. And you go to there, and, like, it's like you come back later, and sometimes there's more stuff there, and it's like, oh, I can access this other area because the paper stuff's here. But that's not really in relation directly to... It's not, like, directly related to what you do. It's not a consequence of your actions. It's just that, okay, I got to this point in the game, so they've supposedly shot some paper stuff in this part of the game now, so I can access the thing, because the game decided I'm allowed to go here at this point. And that's... I don't really like that kind of... I don't know, it feels, like, kind of crappy. It's like, I just waited long enough to go find it, rather than, earning it, like getting the ability or whatever. Even if getting the ability is also scripted, it still feels like it's the way it feels. It makes you feel rewarded when you go back and you do it because you figured out how to get to it. Now when you just went back and you're like, I guess I can walk here now, where I had no way of doing it before because the game decides I can do it. So that was really annoying in terms of the exploration stuff. And I mean, like, a lot of that stuff was frustrating. The minigames were frustrating. Papercrafts got a little frustrating. Some of the exploration stuff just got tedious and frustrating. Some of the battles were a little bit, but that was more just because I was kind of bad at some of them, so I can't really blame the battles too much for that. There's also, like, the issue of, like, I guess, a lot of the characters, the way they're written, like, I know it's not a deep plot or anything, and a lot of people will be like, who want, like, RPGs will want a good story. It's not really a great story. It's a pretty simple plot, and then stuff just kind of happens. I guess, like, the writing in it is kind of bothersome, just because, like, the characters aren't really that interesting. A lot of them, like, unlike in Paper Mario, where I thought talking to everyone was, like, really fun, in this one it feels like most of the characters... they pull the same gag, or like, hey, you're my twin, and like, they just keep saying the same stuff, like, over each other, and like, then they try to fight each other, but they do the exact same stuff, and say the exact same stuff, because they're the same, which is, again, I don't know, at first it's cute, but then after a while you're like, okay, it's just kind of lazy, I get this point already. It doesn't feel funny, it just feels forced, and And that's kind of annoying that they do that. A lot of the characters just say weird things. Like, it's usually like when a character tries to be funny and they actually are trying to make a joke, it's really bad. But then they just say goofy stuff to be goofy. And they're trying to sound serious, I guess, but it comes off goofy. And it's just like, the problem is that every character does that. Almost every character in the game just feels like the same character, like they were all written the same way, and that was annoying. In fact, probably my favorite character in the game ended up being Luigi, because he wasn't like everyone else. He was very emotive in the things he said, like the way he said them, even though he doesn't have any actual words or anything, usually for like his dialogue stuff, aside from like a Mario, Luigi, it's a go, like very small sayings. Most of it's just like weird gibberish speak and like making different actions with his body and stuff. And it's weird that that character that doesn't actually say anything was the most interesting and unique character in the game. That's kind of sad. Even if people did shit on him a lot, that kind of bothered me. Even people who I just helped out are like, hey, you're Luigi? Luigi saved me? No. Something's gotta be up with that. It's gotta be fake. Luigi's a fuck up. Luigi sucks. That really pissed me off, but maybe it's just because I really like Luigi a lot, and they were being fuckholes for no reason. Anyways, there's also like your helper guide character, which, again, there's some like fourth wall breaking stuff that they do, but it's like that character does it a little too much. I forgot the character's name, I'm sorry. And he basically, it's just like, oh, okay, like I get it. And it was cute when you started, but now you've broken the wall so many times. And also the fact that they hold your hand so hard with that. For a lot of stuff, because like especially in the beginning of the game, they're like, we want you to know how to play. And they're trying to kind of show you how to play. But it's like, they also kind of word it as like if you need help, you can go to the menu or at any point go to like this little guide and like practice your moves if you'd like to more use with them. Because there's some moves you even get way late in the game, and unless you want to practice them at the end of the game, you're not going to use them that much, which is kind of a shame. Because practicing them isn't really that fun to do. You rather just field test them, and then you won't really use them that much before the game's over unless you're going to do a lot of backtracking and grinding, which the game really isn't geared towards, because that kind of falls off near the end of the game too. But earlier on, it's like you would think that you'd have the ability to kind of skip some of this stuff, since it's like they put it in this battle guide that you can just go into the menu and check it out and practice it later anyway, so they wouldn't have to tell you everything. But they tell you everything, and then it's like, oh, if you want to know how to do it, here's where it is. And then they just kind of force you to do it anyways, which kind of defeats the point. Like, if you're going to say it's in the guide, then don't force me to do it. Or if you're going to force me to do it, then don't bother making it an exclamation point, like, you should really look this up in the guide after I do it, So that was annoying, and a lot of parts of the game, it just kind of held your hand, like, hey, this is a puzzle. I wonder if you should do solution in different colored text. That's not a hint. That's not what a hint is. Zelda games think they can do this too. That's not what a hint is. Telling me what to do, and it's vague. It's just telling you the solution with vaguely phrasing it as though it's like a hint. Like, and gee, I wonder if you should do the exact thing you're supposed to do. I don't know. Like, I don't know. That shit really bothers me. And they hold your hand way too much, and that can be frustrating as well. Because, like, I'm stupid, but I'm not that fucking stupid. So I guess, I don't know, like, a lot of that stuff came together, and it just ended up being, like, kind of frustrating. And one other thing, which really doesn't matter that much, but is something I guess you might see as a complaint. Very, very, very shallow, nitpicky complaint thing to think about, I guess. More of a question, I guess, but, like, so, basically, we have the Mario and Luigi universe, and then we have all these Paper Mario characters and everything coming from the Paper Mario universe. So clearly they are two different universes. And I always thought that Paper Mario was same Mario characters and everything from the Mario universe, just with that paper aesthetic, because they were being told in a storybook. But now we've seen that Mario and Luigi universe and the Paper Mario universe are two different universes. So, is the Paper Mario universe like a translation of the other Marios, right? The standard Mario universe? Or is Mario and Luigi a translation of the Mario universe? Or is the standard Mario universe a different universe entirely? And are there different Mario universes for, like, Mario Bros. And, like 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 Super Mario Bros. And like Super Mario Galaxy and all this. Brings up a lot of questions because I thought these were all supposed to be kind of based on the same universe. Maybe they're supposed to be like parallel universes. It's really nerdy, nitpicky shit, and it really doesn't matter. It's just weird that it brings up these questions, and I don't know. It's just a really bizarre thing that I found myself thinking about, even though it didn't matter, and even though it doesn't matter, and I don't care. It does make me wonder. Like, I wonder what the thing with that is. I wonder what the deal with that is. But oh, good, honking. That's good. Cause that's good. Put that in my fuck. Whatever, leaving it in. Leaving it in. But those are my complaints. I think I'll leave it at those because those are the only things that bothered me, I guess. Mario and Luigi, Paper Jam. Overall, it's... Look, it's a game that I'm glad I experienced it because I was super excited at the idea of playing a Paper Mario game on my 3DS, on the go, and I thought it would be a fun RPG, and the RPG stuff is really great in this game. It's so fun. But the other stuff it's different, but the variety feels like it kind of takes away, and like they just kind of Frankenstein together these other little mini games into this. And I guess some of them were kind of fun, but there were a lot of ones that were just frustrating, and some of them were just frustrating for the wrong reasons, and they're not built... the papercraft battles aren't really that great either, and a lot of it just feels like it's not built to go with your combat and RPG stuff. It feels like they're more built to be this side gimmicky stuff to say, like, hey, it isn't all just about the battles and stuff, which is a shame because the whole point was, like, the whole reason behind having really interesting combat, I thought, was the way they were going to alleviate the annoyance of battles, was to make them really fun and interesting, not to try and distract you from actually doing the battles. So that was kind of, I don't know. There's too many like frustrating parts, and it took a long time. And it's one where I guess ultimately I'm glad I experienced it, but it's not one that I'm gonna go back to. And I guess because of that, I can't really recommend it too highly. Maybe if for $20 or less, it's not a bad one, especially for an interesting RPG on your 3DS. It's the RPG stuff, like I say, is really good. And if you can put up with the other stuff, then it's a good one that you might actually want to play again. But it feels like it's very heavy on the Mario and Luigi stuff, with just some, some Paper Mario aesthetics tossed in. And I don't know, it could have been something really great, and I feel like they fell short by padding the playtime with all this extra stuff. And I guess that's where I fall on it. What I'm interested in is, for one thing, I guess just as a fun thing, how did you build your characters? I sort of tried to build them all generally as, really strong characters with high attack and defense. But I mostly just tried to beef up Paper Mario as much as possible because I knew the paper stuff was like, he doesn't necessarily take damage when the paper things get hit. Usually the paper copies will just be taken down, and I kind of abused that, tried to do that with the whole card system so that I would get, some free paper copy redos in the cards, and so that he would be super strong. So if the other two went down, the Paper Mario could still, handle himself and buy himself some time with those copies and everything. That's just kind of how I did it. And I built Mario so that he mostly did jumping stuff with those heart boots on, so he would heal a lot without having to use any items. And I built Luigi as mostly using his hammer. And I don't know, I ended up with a shitload of extra items for healing and, the magic and everything that I never really used. But what I'm really interested in, though, are what Paper Mario games have you guys played? And, where does this fall in your list of your Paper Mario games? Like, does this fit in with your other Paper Mario games? Do you think this stacks up? Or do you think it's, or do you think it's not very good for a Paper Mario game? And likewise, I'm wondering, what are the best Mario and Luigi games? Because I haven't played any of those. Does this stack up with other Mario and Luigi games? And I guess if you're going to recommend, like, which Mario and Luigi game do you think I should start with? Or, which one do you think is the best, so I can maybe check that out? I am still kind of interested in checking out the series, but I'm wondering if it's a lot of mini-games and other stuff like this that distract too much. I don't know if I'll be into it or not. So really, tell me that stuff. That'll be fun to put in the comments. And it's just a shame that this is another one of those games that I got this pretty close to launch. I was really excited for it. I tried to avoid any spoilery stuff or too much about it. I just saw a few minutes of gameplay to be like, hey, that looks cool. And unfortunately, it's another game just like Triforce Heroes, where I was like, well, it's okay. I see the appeal, but it's just not something I'm gonna really put myself through again, and that's a shame. But that's been Paper Jam. Boy, I probably should have done a crossover with someone else for this review. That would have been really clever, wouldn't it? Well, I didn't.